All right. So, everyone loves a good investment opportunity,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The promise of, big returns, maybe even financial freedom. But you always got to remember there's two sides to that coin sometimes. What looks like a golden ticket can actually lead you down a rabbit hole of, questionable practices, and poof, your money's gone. So today we're doing a deep dive into the Ashbrookes Group Limited loan note investigation. It's a story with all the ingredients of a financial thriller. You got your red flags, you got your potential investor nightmares, and it's a bit of a wild ride.
It really highlights how an investment that looks totally legit on paper can just unravel. And we're talking about Ashbrookes Group Limited.
Mm-hmm.
They also go by Ashbrookes Inspired, and their loan note product, they were trying to raise funds for Arimco Ltd, which operates under the Ashbrookes umbrella. So far, so good, right? We'll just wait.
So we've got reports, financial statements, even whispers from people who thought they were getting in on a pretty sweet real estate deal. What's the first sign that something's not right?
The loan note was supposed to raise, get this, £3.25 million, which usually means a pretty big venture. But here's where things get interesting. This past January, Arimco Ltd went under, facing liabilities of over £232,000. To make matters worse, a big chunk of that debt is owed to HMRC, the UK tax authority. Not a good sign.
Oof, yeah. Owing money to the tax man, never a good look. But I'm guessing there's got to be more to this than just a company going bust, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When Arimco Ltd went into liquidation, they had to make the list of creditors public. And here's the shocker. There's no mention of any loan note holders. So where did all that investor money go? Did it even make it to Arimco Ltd in the first place?
Wow, that's a huge red flag. It's like the money just vanished. We got to follow the money trail, figure out who's calling the shots here.
Exactly. And that's why we need to introduce the key players in this financial drama. Two names that keep popping up are Mohamed and Sophia Mushtaq. They've got close ties to Sonali Craddock and Mark Kidd, who are connected to the companies managing these loan notes.
Hold on a second. Are these the same people who were at Sonali Craddock's big 50th birthday bash? I vaguely remember reading something about that.
You've got a sharp memory. Yes, they were there hobnobbing with none other than James Baird of New Capital Link. Now, New Capital Link is another one that's been on our radar for, let's just say, some interesting business practices.
So we're talking about a tight-knit group here, folks who seem to know each other a little too well, and they're all tangled up in this loan note situation.
Yeah.
What else should our listener be looking out for?
Well, it gets even more complicated when you look at who was supposed to be safeguarding these loan notes as security trustees. Initially, it was Castle Trust and Management Services, but they went belly up liquidated, to be precise. Then the responsibility got shifted to Alpha Trustee Services Ltd, and guess who's heading that up? None other than Mark Kidd, the same guy connected to the Mushtaqs.
Wait, so they replaced one potentially shady security trustee with another one even more closely tied to the people running the whole operation? That's not exactly confidence-inspiring.
You're catching on, and there's even more shuffling going on. Administrative duties moved from Irene McKenzie to Alexandra Welsh. It's starting to look like a shell game with responsibilities constantly changing hands, so it's harder to figure out who's actually accountable.
Okay, so we've got this group with all these intertwined relationships, company going bust, investor funds that have gone missing, and a revolving door of responsibility. This is already sounding like a recipe for disaster. But let's back up a bit and focus on Mohamed Mushtaq. You mentioned something about his financial history that raised a red flag. What's the story there?
Well, Mohamed seems to have a bit of a habit of using voluntary arrangements. These are legal agreements that allow people or companies to avoid bankruptcy by restructuring their debts. Now, on the surface, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But when it becomes a pattern, it starts to raise some eyebrows.
Yeah.
It's almost like using a legal loophole to avoid closer scrutiny.
So it's legal, but not necessarily ethical. And Arimco Ltd, the company at the heart of this whole loan note thing, they also use a voluntary arrangement, right?
Yeah. Remember HMRC, the tax authority? They actually tried to shut Arimco Ltd down by filing a winding up petition against them. A pretty serious move. Usually means a company's in deep financial trouble. But guess what? Arimco countered with a voluntary arrangement, basically dodging the shutdown again. It's legal, but makes you wonder what they're trying to hide.
Definitely seems like they were trying to avoid scrutiny, maybe even hiding how bad their financial situation really was. So we've got these suspicious connections, financial maneuvering, and a company teetering on the brink of collapse. Where does the story go from here? This is where it gets really interesting. We had a first-hand account from someone who tried to invest in an Ashbrookes Group Ltd loan note back in September 2023. They thought they knew where their money was going, but things took a very unexpected turn.
This is a classic example of why it's so important to read the fine print and really understand what you're getting into, no matter how tempting an investment might seem. This person thought they were investing directly in Ashbrookes Group Ltd, but James Baird, the guy from the fancy birthday bash, directed their money to a completely different company. S2 John Street Ltd.
Hold up, so they were promised one investment and ended up with something completely different. Sounds like a classic bait and switch. What did James Baird have to say about that?